أن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه أما بعد فإن خير الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى رسول الله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. In the previous class, Ikhwani, we did the introduction to Al-Imam An-Nawawi's 40 hadith, rahimahullah ta'ala. And we shed light on some issues that we perceive as being pretty important to know in regards to this classical work. Once again, with the weather being the way it is, we ask Allah Azza wa Jal first to protect us on our way, making our ways back to where we come from, inshallah, and to also put it in our scales of good deeds of coming out, trying to come together and to get some knowledge about the kalam of the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So may he put this effort for all of you brothers and sisters in your mizan of hasanat yawm al-qiyam. The first hadith of Al-Imam An-Nawawi is a hadith that scholars paid attention to in their books. And it is the hadith of Abu Hafs Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu, the Amir al-Mu'mineen and the second best person from the companions after Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhum ajma'in. He said that he heard the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say, إنما الأعمال بالنيات وإنما لكل امرئ ما نوى فمن كانت هجرته إلى الله ورسوله فهجرته إلى الله ورسوله ومن كانت هجرته للدنيا يصيبها أو امرأة ينكحها فهجرته إلى ما هاجر إليه. Verily, the deeds that people do, the actions of the people, they will be judged based upon the niyat, based upon the intent. So every individual will get that in which he intended. So whoever performed the hijra or the migration and his objective, his niyyah, was to please Allah and his messenger, then his reward will be because of that or based upon that. And whoever made hijra in order to get some worldly gain, to get something from the dunya, or to marry a particular woman, then he will get rewarded according to what his niyyah was. Al-Imam An-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala went on to mention after this hadith that this hadith has been collected by the two imams of the muhaddithin, Abu Abdullah Muhammad ibn Ismail ibn Ibrahim ibn al-Mughira ibn Bardazba al-Bukhari, as well as Al-Imam Abu Hussein Muslim ibn al-Hujjaj Ibn Muslim al-Qushayri and Nisaburi in their two authentic books that Al-Imam An-Nawawi said, Huma asahul kutub al-musannafa. And these two books are the most authentic books that have ever been written. This hadith, as I mentioned, was narrated by Umar radiyallahu anhu. And he was the only companion who narrated this hadith in an authentic chain of narration. So this hadith is from the Gharaib, the strange hadith in Sahih Bukhari. It's not an ordinary hadith. It's from the strange hadith. Strange in terms of the science of hadith. We're not going to get into that because we won't really appreciate it for the most part because we're not on that level of trying to learn. And that's not putting anyone down. That's myself included. I'm telling you that the ulama of al-Islam have classified this hadith and paid attention to this hadith and gave it a tremendous position in the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal. So it was befitting for Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala to start his book off with this hadith. It was only befitting. He also started other books off that he authored with this hadith. This is not the only book, as we mentioned, that Al-Imam al-Nawawi wrote. He has Riyadh al-Salihin. The very first hadith in Riyadh al-Salihin is this hadith. He has another book in fiqh called Al-Majmu' Sharh Al-Muhaddab. It's a hadith, a book of fiqh. And in the very first chapter of the book, he brings some ayat talking about the importance of having ikhlas. وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. He brought all of these ayat, and then the very first hadith he brought in that book, that voluminous book, classical book of Shafi'i fiqh, he brought this hadith as the first hadith. And obviously for the hadith, he started the book off with this hadith. Scholars before Al-Imam al-Nawawi did the same thing. Pay attention. The scholars of Islam, this hadith, they used to start their books off with it like for the sake of barakah, like a tabarruk. You touch the Kaaba like that to get barakah. You take the Zamzam water and you put it on yourself to get barakah. When the rain comes down, for an example, or maybe even the snow, but I wouldn't advise the snow. But if the rain came down, you go out in the rain and you put the rain on you for barakah, because it just came recently from Allah Azza wa Jal. Al-barakah. There's a barakah that is legislated and a barakah tabarruk that's not legislated. The Sufi sheikh comes, he drinks out of this, and then I'm going to take it and I'm going to save it and I'm going to wrap it up and put it in my house. That's nothing in the religion. That's not legislated. But touching the Kaaba, the rain and so forth, that's legislated. And another form of tabarruk is to put what the scholars did. They started their books off with this hadith, showing the importance of it and showing the position of the hadith in al-Islam. From them, Al-Imam al-Bukhari, the very first hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari, this hadith that we're dealing with right now. Al-Imam al-Baghawi, who was a tremendous scholar from the ulama of the past, Shafi'i scholar. He has the book Sharh al-Sunnah. It's a book of fiqh, Shafi'i fiqh, but with dalil. He started it off with this hadith. He has another book, Masabih al-Sunnah. Masabih al-Sunnah has something to do with Mishkat, al-Mishkat. I think many of you are familiar with that. Al-Imam al-Baghawi started that book off with this hadith. The great scholar Abdul Ghani al-Maqdisi, one of the best books in fiqh of hadith, Umdatul Ahkam, is the book in which he only took hadith that Bukhari and Muslim agreed upon only, and he put them in a book for fiqh of hadith. He didn't take the hadith that only Bukhari narrated or only Muslim. No, the hadith that are muttafiq alayhi, so that the Muslim, when he gets that book, Umdatul Ahkam, when he gets that book and he learns fiqh in that book, he knows every single hadith that he's reading, every hadith is authentic. The point is, in that book, the very first hadith, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. So it's a repetitive occurrence, again showing us this was the way of the ulama of the past, this was the way of the ulama of al-hadith. Al-Imam al-Suyuti, rahimahullah ta'ala, he has a book called Al-Jami' al-Saghir. Al-Jami' al-Saghir started it off with this hadith. So the scholars paid attention to this hadith. Al-Imam al-Shafi'i said about today's hadith, there are over 70 branches of fiqh that come from this hadith. Some of the scholars said this hadith is a half of Islam. This hadith and another hadith that's going to be coming. The whole religion revolves around these two hadith. This one and one that's coming. Some of the other scholars said, no, it's a third of al-Islam. This one is a third and two others. The other two are going to come. Again, why? It's as we told you in the introduction. Al-Imam Ibn as-Salah, when he brought this book together, Al-Nawawi, when he added on, Al-Imam ibn Rajab, when he added on to what a nawawi did, they said we're going to concentrate and bring together the Jawami' al-Kalim, the words that the Prophet brought and he spoke, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So as a result of that, there's different positions that scholars took. It's not worth our time, worth our while to argue with each other. It's a half. No, it's a third. No, that's not the point. The point is, it's an important hadith. Some of those ulama of the past, they used to say, it is highly recommended to start a book off that you write. You want to write a book? Then put this hadith first so that you'll remind yourself and you'll remind others of the importance of al-ikhlas. And having ikhlas, sincerity, ikhwani, is a jihad. Is a jihad. Al-ikhlas in giving a talk, al-ikhlas, sincerity in attending the talk. Al-ikhlas is an issue that ash-shaytan, lanatullahi alayhi, wa yahfidhana Allahu ta'ala jami'an min ash-shaytan ar-rajim. A shaitan comes to the individual and he competes with him in terms of the individual trying to make his niyat sincerely for Allah. So the people of the past used to pay attention to this hadith, starting it off. As for the meaning of the hadith, the narrator is Umar radiallahu anhu. And as I mentioned, this hadith is called Hadith Ahad. There's no other scholar or no other companion who narrated the hadith. And the one who took it from Umar, he's the only one who narrated it from the tabi'een. And the one who narrated from him is the only one who narrated from that level of people. And then the one who narrated from him is the only one who narrated it on that level. And then after him, a lot of people started narrating the hadith collectively. So it's one of those special, unique hadith. Not to go too deep into the issue about the hadith al-ahad, whether the hadith has one narrator from the companions, 10 or 50. If it's authentic, we are going to accept it. This hadith is in Sahih Bukhari and Muslim, and it's also been narrated by the 4 imams of the Sunan, Abu Dawud, At-Tirmidhi, An-Nasa'i, and Ibn Majah, and other than them. This hadith is everywhere, in almost every book of hadith. But if the hadith was only in Ibn Majah only, and it's authentic, we're going to take it. If it's mutawatir, meaning narrations, we're going to take it. If it's one, we're going to take it. If it's aziz, we're going to take it. So the fact that Umar is the only one who narrated is not our business, it's not our job to figure out why, where was Abu Bakr, where was Uthman and Ali and Ukasha? And since Umar is by himself, we're not going to take it. La, it's an authentic hadith. Umar, his kunya is Abu Hafs. And that's because his daughter, her name was Hafsa with a ta marbuta, like Khadija too, Fatima too. In the Arabic language, it is permissible to cut off the last ta marbuta if there's not going to be any ambiguity or misunderstanding about the word you're trying to mention. So the word Mecca has a ta marbuta. You could call it Mecca. The Prophet ﷺ used to call our mother Aisha, her name is Aisha too. He used to call her Aish and cut off that last ta marbuta. So Umar radiallahu anhu is Abu Hafsa, but they used to call him Abu Hafs, cutting off that last ta marbuta. As we mentioned, he's the best human being after the prophets and after the messengers, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhim ajma'een, and after Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. And he was the Khalifa after Abu Bakr. He heard this hadith, and the hadith is pretty self-explanatory. It's talking about the importance of having ikhlas and purifying your intent. Because in al-Islam, as this hadith shows us in other hadith, the intent is more profound than the action itself. A person's intention is more important, more profound than the action itself. And we know that because the hadith is telling us anyone who does something for Allah, he'll get the reward for what he did. And anyone who does something for other than Allah, he won't get the reward for what he did. The Prophet said, إِذَا الْتَقَى مُسْلِمَانْ بِسَيْفَيْهِمَا فَالْقَاتِلُ الْمَقْتُولُ فِي النَّارِ. If two Muslims meet each other and they have their swords out, they have their weapons, and they're trying to kill each other, he said the murderer and the one who was murdered, both of them will go to the hellfire. The people say, Ya Rasulullah, we know why the one who murdered is in the hellfire. He killed someone, he killed his brother. But why is the one who was murdered, why does he also go to the hellfire? He said because he was trying to kill his brother. He had the niyyah to kill his brother. That was his intent. So although he wasn't successful, it was his goal, it was his objective, and that's why he came out. And that's why he was murdered. So that hadith, along with many other hadith, this one included, goes to show the importance of the niyyah. The niyyah is more profound than the action itself. The Nabi told us, sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam, anyone who intends to do a good deed, if he were to do that good deed, like give £1, if he did that good deed, he did it. If he did it, Allah Azza wa Jalla will reward him tenfold for what he did. But if he intended to do a good deed and he wasn't able to, because the snow stopped him, because he had a flat tire, because the thing was closed, because beyond his ability something happened, although he didn't complete what he wanted to complete, he's going to get one reward for that niyyah. So it goes to show again, if a person intends to do a bad deed, he goes and he wants to steal the pound. If he steals that pound, he'll be responsible for the £1. If he went to steal a pound, but the snow stopped him or something beyond his ability stopped him, he still is going to be responsible for what his niyyah was, unless he changed his niyyah to do the bad thing. He was on his way to do the bad thing and he decided, I'm not going to do it. He'll get a reward for not doing the bad deed. So again, what's the point? The point here is this hadith goes to show the importance of a niyyah in everything that you do. From the ibadat in al-Islam, the forms of worship, everything that you do has to be coupled with and accompanied by the niyyah and al-ikhlas. As for some of the words and phrases and ideas and concepts of the hadith, this hadith is commonly known as the hadith of Muhajir. The hadith Muhajir. It is said and it is reported that there was a companion of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam who made hijra to Al-Medina because there was a woman that he wanted to marry. During the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if you were living during that time, no matter where you lived, you had to leave where you were at and you had to go to Al-Medina to be with the Muslims and Al-Islam. And it was a big reward if you did it. If you died on the way, if you died in Al-Medina, you are muhajir and you get a lot of rewards. We have the ability to get that reward right now. Right now. Does anyone know how you can get the reward of making hijra right now without making hijra? Anybody know? Huh? Now? There's a particular ibadah that we can do that if you do that ibadah, you'll get the reward of making hijra to the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Nabi, he said, Al-ibadatu fil harj ka hijratin ilayya. Anyone who increases his ibadah during the time of fitna, al-harj is fighting, when people are fighting and killing each other, like the Salafi people between themselves, in Palestine, in Syria, anywhere where there's a lot of fighting and confusion going on, the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us, anyone who increases his ibadah, meaning he disengages from the fitna, he doesn't become a part of the fitna, he disengages and he increases his ibadah, gaining knowledge, making salat, making umrah, giving sadaqah, getting himself in a position to get those rewards, he'll get the reward of making hijrah to the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wasallam. So the point is, al-hijrah, what is it? Al-hijrah is migrating from a country or place where a person is afraid for himself, there's no safety and security, and he goes and he migrates to a place where there is safety and security, like the hijra from Mecca to Al-Habasha, Ethiopia, Abyssinia. The Muslims in the beginning of Islam, they were afraid for themselves. You will lose your life. Non-Muslims were hostile. They will kill you. So they left the place of fear and they removed themselves for their religion and they went to Ethiopia. Another hijra is to leave the land of kufr and shirk and mushrikeen and to go to the land of al-Islam. And al-Islam, the land of al-Islam and the Muslimin, like making hijra from Mecca to al-Medina. So al-hijra is from the institutions of al-Islam, and it will remain standing until Yawm al-Qiyamah. That second hijra especially, because the Nabi said that, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Another important issue about the hijra is that the Nabi says, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, muhajir man taraka ma nahallahu anhu. The real muhajir, the real person who makes hijra, is the one who leaves off what Allah made haram, what Allah prohibited him from. Hijra means to abandon something, to boycott something, to leave something off, to leave this land and to go to that land. He said the real migrator, the real muhajir, is the one who leaves off and abandons what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made haram. From this hadith of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam concerning the niyyah, very important point about the niyyah, and the way that we've been taught al-Islam, and the way that we've been trained to be Muslims and to worship Allah. People have taught us things that are inconsistent. They don't have proofs for it. A lot of it is just from the wives' tales and from the imagination that people made up. Some of it is from the efforts of certain scholars, but it wasn't on point. Like the issue of a person wanting to make the salat, and then he says, I intend to perform this salat that is wajib or fard, behind this imam, facing the qibla, and so forth and so on. That's how many of us learned the salat when we first became Muslims, when we started to practice Islam, when we were being taught a salat. This hadith of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it shows us an indication that the place of a person's niyyah is not on his tongue, but the place of the niyyah is in his heart, with the exception of when he makes the talbiyah for al-hajj or al-umrah. In this case, he says with his tongue, labbaik Allahumma labbaik. Oh Allah, here I am to perform al-hajj or umrah. So the talbiyah is the talbiyah, but it is part of a person's hijrah, and because a part of the person's niyyah, and because the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us to say it, we say it. But there's no other ibadah from the ibadat of al-Islam in trying to get your niyyat sincerely for Allah. There's no form of worship where Islam told you to say with your tongue, I intend to do this, I intend to do that. The place of a person's niyyat is inside of his heart. No one knows the reality of it except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and that individual. No one else knows. And this is why the fast of Ramadan, or the fast in al-Islam period, is virtuous, because no one knows if an individual is fasting. No one knows his real niyyat except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and then that particular individual. So the hadith is a self-explanatory hadith for the most part. It's a hadith that tells and suggests we should pay attention to beautifying our niyyah and rectifying the niyyah. As the great scholar of Islam, Al-Imam Sufyan al-Thawri, he used to say that there was nothing more difficult for him than wrestling with having a pure niyyah. This man, people used to travel from all over the Muslim world, paying attention to him, coming to meet him and to take knowledge from him. It became very easy for an individual who all eyes on that individual. And part of the nature of Bani Adam is everybody wants to feel validated. Everybody wants to feel I'm somebody, I have some worth. So if all of the attention and all of the eyes are on that individual and he enjoys that and he likes that, That's something that is destructive. So, Imam Sufyan al-Thawri, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, there was nothing that I used to have more trouble with trying to rectify than that issue of my niyyah. And if that was the case with that Imam who was bigger than Bukhari and bigger than Muslim, then what do you think should be the case with people who come after him, like all of us? May Allah ta'ala give us al-ikhlas in our actions of what we do. So that's the first hadith, ikhwani, concerning the 40 hadith of al-Imam al-Nawawi, the hadith of an-niyyah. There's another point really important connected to this. An incident happened between the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that was similar to this hadith. Whoever made hijra for Allah and His Messenger, then his reward will be comparable to what his niyat was. And if anyone made hijra to marry a woman or to get something from the dunya, then his reward will be what his niyat suggested. There's a lady from the companions. She's an illustrious personality and an auspicious lady of nobility and knowledge and aql. Her kunya is Sulaim. She was the mother of Anas ibn Malik, radiyallahu anhuma. Sulaim was approached by a man who was from the rich people of Al-Medina. His kunya was Abu Talha, and he was a kafir. He said, I want to marry you, Sulaim. You are a woman, I want to marry you. She said, no woman in her right mind would refuse a man like you, Abu Talha. You are the man. Nobody in his right mind will refuse you. But you are a mushrik, kafir, and I'm a Muslimah. And this is not permissible in our religion by any stretch of the imagination. It's not permissible for the Muslim lady to marry anyone other than the Muslim man. Like it, who likes it, hate it, who hate it. That is the religion of Allah Azza wa Jal. But if the lady was married to a husband and she became a Muslim before him, he should be given some time to look into Islam and to make a decision. He should be given some time before anyone else marries that lady. And we should be easy with people in that situation, with the lady and with the man, especially in this environment. Anyway, she said, it's not permissible for me to marry you, but if you become a Muslim, if you say La ilaha illallah, I will marry you, and that will be my dowry, my mahr. Just say La ilaha illallah. I don't want any of your money for magnificent dowry. La ilaha illallah will be my dowry, and you become a Muslim, I'll marry you. He said, okay. So he became a Muslim. He said, La ilaha illallah. When he became a Muslim, he saw how the companions were. He saw the dawah of al-Islam. He saw the Prophet ﷺ teaching the people about the important basics and the cornerstones of al-Islam. At-Tawheed, following the Sunnah, issues like that. And upon becoming a Muslim, his Islam became better, and he became one of the best companions. A pivotal companion in terms of helping al-Islam. I told you he was the richest man in Al-Medina. Allah revealed the ayat of the Quran. You will not believe until you give freely from your wealth. That man went when that ayat was revealed, and he said, Ya Rasulullah, this is the most expensive garden in all of Medina. I'm giving it to you. Do with it what you want to do with it. If that man wasn't sincere, he wouldn't have given that money. He wouldn't have helped the Muslims prepare for the different wars that they had to wage and engage in. So here we have an example of a man marrying a woman from the companions. Does this hadith yantabiq alayhi, does this hadith apply to him? La wallahi. It's like the other non-Muslims. From the 8 people who can receive as zakat are the people who Allah Ta'ala called them the ones who their hearts are inclined to Islam. So the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to look at those chiefs of Quraysh and other than them, and he would give them a lot of wealth, camels, sheep, cows, all kind of wealth. The man would become a Muslim, and he said, I became a Muslim to get the money. But when I came into Islam, and I saw Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the way he was, and the way the companions were, I became convinced about the reality of al-Islam, and then their Islam became better. So don't let anyone read a book that was authored by Shiite. Don't let anyone read a book of an individual who doesn't put the companions in their proper place, and then they bring these types of shubahat and say, look, this guy over here, Hasib ibn Aqra, the leader of the Arabs, he said, I became a Muslim to get the money. But when I became a Muslim, I saw how it was, and then my Islam became where my strength, my iman, it grew. These people come and say, you see these people, they were never Muslims, they weren't sincere. This is not something that is acceptable. And the proof of that is, if you look at the sacrifices and the positions of those people after Islam, their Islam, it's a clear indication they were real Muslims. Hasib ibn Aqra, he was against Musaylima al-Kadhab, and he fought against these individuals. If he wasn't a sincere Muslim, then that wouldn't have been the case. The Prophet died, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and in all of those cases that these people bring, they will never bring a case of a companion where the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam died and he was not happy with these individuals. Certain people did certain things from the companions where the Nabi wasn't happy with them. After doing that thing, he boycotted certain people. He didn't speak to them. He didn't give them salams. But they made tawbah. Allah exonerated them. And then the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was happy with all of his companions. And when he died, there wasn't a single companion that he was not happy with. So the fact that that happened alone is a sufficient dalil and proof that all of the companions accepted al-Islam, and for whatever reason they accepted Islam, they hassanu islamuhum. They made their Islam, they perfected it and beautified it. So this hadith, there's no Hajir. All of the narrations of that are not authentic, but still, nonetheless, it goes to show, generally speaking, that the person will be rewarded according to the niyat that he did. So the niyat is more important than the action itself. So rectify the niyat. Okay, Ikhwani, we're going to stop here, inshallah ta'ala, concerning the first hadith. A lot can be said. I hope we have a robust discussion in the Q&A session, because, as we mentioned, Imam al-Shafi'i said, 70 chapters of fiqh come from this particular hadith. So maybe we can delve into some of those issues. So if you brothers or sisters have any questions, you could put your question forward now, inshallah.
Question on Usamah is that when doing a good deed, what should the intention be? Can you have more than one intention? And also, what are the common bid'ahs involving the intention?
I'm not really sure what is meant by when doing a good deed, can you have multiple intentions? What comes to my mind is something like a salat. You go into the masjid for a particular salat, so you do the tahiyatul masjid, 2 rak'ah, and at the same time you intend to do the sunnah of that particular prayer that's going to be performed. Is that permissible? The jumhur of the ulama, the majority of them say this is permissible. If that's his intent, he goes in and he doesn't have enough time to perform the 2 rak'ahs of al-fajr, and then the 2 rak'ahs, the 2 rak'ahs of greeting the masjid, and then the 2 rak'ahs that you do sunnah before the fajr. The majority of the ulama, because of this hadith, said if an individual combine those 2 ibadat with one niyyah, it's permissible. He was going to be judged based upon his niyyah. And even if he had time and he combined them, and there was time to get up to pray 2 and then to pray 2 more, but he sat down, they said he'll get rewarded for both of them, because that was the niyyah of the individual. So that's what I understand from that. As for the innovation of the niyyah, from the innovation of the niyyah, the one that comes to my mind is the one that I mentioned, where the person uses his tongue to express what his niyyah is. I'm intending to do this and I'm intending to that. I intend to make i'tikaf in the masjid for a one day, or from Salatul Fajr into Salatul Maghrib, all of these types of statements are not what has been sanctioned by the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam. Wallahu a'lam.
When you see an action of an individual or someone and you advise them and saying that what he did was wrong, and he turns around and says, but my intention was okay, how do you understand that? How can you...
A person who has a good intention, he has half of the challenge completed. And this is why some of the scholars said that this hadith is a half of Islam or a third of Islam. In relationship to the actions, any ibadah like salat, you have to have the correct intention. So the person said, this thing that I'm doing the mawlid of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam out of love for him. I have good intentions. We say that's good, it's acceptable. But there's another hadith that they said is the other half of Islam, or a second third of Islam. And that's the hadith that's going to be coming, inshallah, after about 3 lessons. The Nabi said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, anyone who does an action that is not from our religion will have it rejected. So the intention has to be done, has to be good, and the thing has to be done according to what has been legislated. According to what has been legislated. So it's not enough just to have good intention. The intention has to be there, and it has to be in accordance to what is legislated. Aywa, Abu Ibrahim. Salam rahmatullah.
Is it permissible to change our intention midway through an action? So that a person prayed at the beginning, there was an element of riyah, and then midway through his salah, he feared Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he was reminded, and then he straightened his intention. What's the ruling on a person straight off?
Now, concerning changing the intention in the middle of the ibadah, this issue has a lot of precise speech to it. At the moment, I don't recall all of the kalam that has been mentioned in it, but the scholars made some distinctions in this. A person, for an example, can't start praying a particular prayer. For an example, he is praying Salatul Asr. He's praying Salatul Asr. While he's praying, he remembers, I didn't make Salatul Dhuhr. So in the middle of that Salat, he says, well, I'm changing my intention. I'm going to make this Salatul Dhuhr in the middle of the Salat. They said, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. But for the example that Abu Ibrahim gave, a person, he starts off an ibadah, and he's doing it for other than Allah. He's showing off for other than Allah. And he's fighting himself while he's doing it. He's fighting himself. Or he's inspired. Don't do this for other than Allah. In the middle of that situation, he purifies his intention. He pushes shaitan away with waswas of shaitan, and he tries to focus, this is for Allah and only for Allah. And he may even start crying as a dalil of his sincerity. In this case, they said that this is something that is permissible. This is something that he's responsible for doing. When he's praying, he has to keep shaitan out. Whatever shaitan does, it comes and he interrupts him. He's allowed to do different things to repel him, to get him out of there. So if his intention has been flawed and faulty, Al-Islam allowed him to rectify that intention from the salat itself. That's something that's permissible. And there's a lot of kalam in that. That's just the surface that I remember the distinction between those different ibadat. Good question, Abu Ibrahim. Any more questions, Akhwani? Bilal.
Said, look, the Prophet didn't know what action Bilal was doing that got him to paradise. So we can do actions so long as that intention is correct. So what should our response be to that?
Well, first of all, the response to that scenario is the whole incident is a proof against people of innovation, like the people who say that he knew everything, that he's hazir, nazir, and knows the ilm al-ghayb, because he didn't know what Bilal was doing, and he had to be informed what it was that Bilal was doing. Second of all, Allah mentioned and described and told us that the Nabi doesn't talk based upon his desires. He talks based upon revelation. So revelation comes to him. So the sunnah is what he did, what he said, and what was done in his presence, and he gave it his tacit approval. By him giving his approval is because it's not permissible for anything to happen in his presence, and he remains silent about it without rectifying it and letting people know this thing is from the religion or not from the religion. So in the case of Bilal, the Nabi was there, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as the khatam to say, yes, this is this and this is that. He doesn't know everything. Someone came and said, Ya Rasulullah, what is the most beloved place in the earth? And what's the most hated place in the earth? He said, Allahu Alam. He didn't say anything, Allahu Alam. Time went by, Jibril came to him and said, the most beloved places to Allah are the masjids. The most hated places to Allah is the marketplace. So Jibril came and informed him what he didn't know. Nobody else can come down today and say something contradictory to that, something similar to that, just because he wants to do it or he wants to say it. So when Bilal radiallahu anhu was doing the wudu, every time he woke up in the middle of the night, he never woke up to relieve himself. He never woke up. Something just woke him up. He never woke up in the middle of the night except that he made wudu and prayed 2 rakat and got back in the bed. The Nabi said, because of that, your footsteps were ahead of me in the Jannah. On this particular occasion, when I became a Muslim, some people who I became Muslim with, they're similar to me. They said this goes to show proof that the black man is in Jannah before Prophet Muhammad. So anyone can take any hadith and use it for whatever he wants to use it for. Anyone. So the point here is that the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what he gave his tacit approval, his taqreer. He's the one who says yes, yes or no. Anybody else who comes with some new stuff, and similar to this, ikhwani, is the funeral or the maqbara, the grave, the qabr. He broke the 2 pieces of the plant off. He broke it in half, put one on that grave and one on the other grave. He said these 2 people are being punished for something that the people don't consider to be major sins. This one, he used to make a namima, namima, going back with tales, carrying tales. And that other one, he didn't protect himself from urine. He would urine and it would get on his clothes, najasa. He said, I'm going to put these 2 things here, these plants, and the moisture of the plants, I hope, will relieve their punishment. So he did that. No one can come now and put flowers and plants on a grave because you don't know if the person is being punished or not. You can't make qiyas on that issue, that hadith. You can't make analogy of that hadith of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You can't make analogy of what Bilal did. Those are things from the ilm al-ghayb. No room for ijtihad in those types of issues. Good question, Akhi Bilal. No doubt, as this hadith suggests, things have to be done for Allah. So the ayat of the Quran, وَلِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ حِجُّ الْبَيْتِ مَنِ اسْتَطَاعَ إِلَيْهِ سَبِيلًا. Allah has the right on the people that they make hajj to his house for him. So the hajj should be only for Allah. But there's no harm in having peripheral intentions, secondary intentions. My main goal and objective is to go and to perform al-hajj and umrah. That's the main goal and objective. But secondarily, I'm going to meet my brother there. I'm going and I'm going to go to the Prophet's masjid secondarily. I'm going and I want to meet this sheikh and that sheikh. I'm going and I want to buy books and I want to buy gold. There's nothing wrong with that. Al-Islam allowed us to benefit from those types of issues. And Allah Ta'ala even mentioned that in the Quran from the ahkam of the Hajj, that He allowed the people to get benefit from selling and trading while they are in Hajj. The masjid is the same way. I'm going, the goal and the objective is to make salat in the masjid lillah. But when I'm going there, I'm going to meet a brother to borrow money from him, to give him money that he wants to borrow. That's the meeting place from where we're going to go, and we're going to go do something else. So those secondary peripheral niyat, there's nothing wrong with that at all. Nothing wrong with that at all. But the person has to fight to make sure the main goal and objective is Allah Azza wa Jal. And then those ulama of the past from the muhaddithun, when they used to go for Hajj, they used to say, we were going to visit Sufyan ibn Uyayna in Mecca. We would go to make Hajj, but some of us, our niyat was to meet Sufyan ibn Uyayna. And then they used to make jihad to change that niyat from him being the focal point to the fact that he should be making the umrah to the trip for Allah Azza wa Jal. Naam, akhi, akhuna.
I met one person today who was fasting, and I asked him why he was fasting. He said he was fasting because of Milad, the Prophet's birthday. And when I asked why, he said the Prophet used to fast on his birthday, so I'm doing the same. What would you say to that?
All of the kalam about the Mawlid has been exhausted for the most part. Today, the last few days, if you contact me, any of you, I'll send this to you. As a matter of fact, I'll send it to Harun, and he can send it to you people. That brother Yasir Qadi, I don't know if this is recent or not, but he wrote a 3-part series for some group about the history of the Mawlid. The history of the Mawlid. And the first part is, when was the Prophet born? Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And he did, as he usually does, academically and literally, his literature, what he writes, he did an excellent job about all of the statements. When was the Prophet born? And why did the people say the 12th of Rabi'ul Awwal as opposed to the 10th or the 2nd, although more people of the past used to say the 10th or the 2nd? Why did it become the 12th for most of the people? Excellent academic work. The second part was, how did the people start doing this thing? And he brought that information. And the third part is, how and when did this creep into the Sunni lands? Because it was something that the Fatimi people used to do in Egypt. They used to do it, not the Sunni people. And it was stopped, actually. So I would suggest that you brothers read that and keep that, because it's extremely informative. Something that shouldn't be done is as simple as that. But I get you that information through this brother, and you can read those things and keep that and possibly spread it around. And in mentioning Yasir Qadi, that particular work, that's what I'm addressing, and that's what I'm encouraging you guys to do, similar to the nice books that he has, like Dua and the Quranic sciences. Well, as I said, the issue is already detailed. He brought that as the scholars brought it. The Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was asked by one of the companions, why do you fast on Mondays and Thursday? He said, I was born on that day, and the revelation came down on that day. He didn't fast because of a birthday celebration. And we don't know what day he was, what day was that. So any person who comes in this religion and he gives a number to something, you have to do it 20 times, 7 times, 8 times. If you do this so many times, you get that. Anyone who comes and he designates a place, you have to do it right here. You must do it right here. Before we go Jamaat Tabligh, we go out, we have to stand at the door and make a special dua and stuff. Anyone who gives special number, special place, a special mode, a special day, They have to bring the proof for that in our religion. So if someone says, I'm fasting on Monday because the Nabi fasted on Monday, we said, okay, we understand that equation. But the companions, radiallahu anhum, they didn't do that. They didn't do that. Now, Yusuf, salam alaikum. كيف؟ والله أنا بخير. أنا أين إلهام؟ أين إلهام؟ اتصلت بها كثير. كم مرة شوف عندي محاضرة الناس أمامي أنا أتصل بك بعد ما تخلص هم أمامي الآن. I'm sorry about that, إخوان. That was my sister. تفضلوا.
Brother, sorry, could you clarify your last statement? Did the Sahaba didn't fast on Mondays, or did they not do it?
Companions fasted on Monday, but not because the Nabi, his birthday. It was his sunnah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he encouraged people to fast on Mondays and Thursdays. We don't get narrations that they said we're doing this because of his birthday. Wallahu alam. Aywa, akhi.
How far do you go to check your intention for every action? For example, if you want to make main kinship to keep your family happy, you just go. You go to masjid, you just go. You have to actually sit back and think of the intention.
Good question, akhi Zahid. Concerning the intentions, our religion, ikhwani, we have to be balanced in terms of our intellect. We don't give too much credit to the intellect beyond what is acceptable, nor do we reject the usage and the importance of the intellect. Sometimes intellectually you just know certain things make sense and certain things don't make sense. Islam didn't order us, command us, encourage us to sit and to waste time contemplating what your niyat is. When a person wants to make the salat in the masjid, the fact that he looks at the clock, the fact that he starts to move around and he starts to collect his things, he's making wudu, all of those are proofs of his niyat. He doesn't have to sit and literally think about and contemplate and consider what he's doing. He has to just be normal and natural. There may come sometimes in certain instances where he'll take that time out and he wants to be sure about a particular thing. But every day, all the time, for everything, his life is going to be, quality of his life is going to be compromised. Because we don't find the Nabi doing that, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it's not something that is natural. But at the same time, cultivating the niyyah and the intention, it requires some consideration, it requires some thought, because a lot of times we just get used to doing things and we just do them and the niyyah is not there and we may not get the reward of the particular deed because we didn't cultivate the niyyah correctly and we're used to that. So what is moderate? What is acceptable? Not going overboard or underboard either way. Any more questions, Ikhwani? Okay, then inshallah ta'ala we're going to stop here and I'm going to give that thing to Harun. Anybody who wants that information about the Mawlid, he can get it from Harun. هذا وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. والسلام عليكم.